Hello and good morning from Accra, my brothers and sisters. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of this program. Nigeria is my second home, and how I wish we were able to sit together, network, and share ideas in close proximity to each other. But this is where COVID has left us. I must say that despite the challenges, it has also pushed us to be more innovative and also ensuring that we make better use of technology to manage our time. I firmly believe this mutually beneficial friendship will benefit from opportunities created by the African Economic Congress platform to share ideas, experiences, and solutions. I also strongly believe that progressive social interactions such as this are crucial to building consensus, developing and framing policies, and driving innovation, especially in the face of the monumental challenges posed by COVID-19. So soon, COVID is in its second year, and this is why we must thank Nancy and her team for the initiative to put together the African Economic Congress. I missed my first opportunity to join the deliberations because of other commitments I had. I'm glad for yet another invitation this year on the theme, Accelerate Africa, Building Back Better. The theme for this year's program offers an opportunity to reflect on our collective response so that we can build resilience during future pandemics. Additionally, it provides options to reset our economic progress by leveraging the inclusiveness exhibited during this crisis. I'm happy to announce that an independent global health panel that I'm honored to be part of is advocating the establishment of a global public health convention that will ensure adequate pandemic preparedness and response. Admittedly, COVID-19 is one of the many challenges that have aggravated Africa's vulnerabilities and exacerbated existing development challenges. COVID is impacting and impeding the previously steady progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, whose target date is only about 8 years away. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that these are very challenging and unprecedented times for Africa and the rest of the world. However, despite all the challenges and heartbreaks this pandemic has visited on us, there is one thing we can all agree on, and that is when the pandemic is finally over, one sanitary practice that will remain with us for sure will be the washing of our hands more often or the use of hand sanitizers. As of mid-October this year, the number of confirmed or reported COVID-19 cases by African countries was 8,509,000. Representing about 3.53% of the total global infections. This figure of about 8.5 million is deceptive. We know our testing capacity is far from optimal. The fact, as reported by WHO, that 6 out of 7 infections go undetected in Africa is a very worrying one. The WHO, as of the 10th of October 2021, estimated that the cumulative number of infections on the African continent will be in the region of 59 million by the same date. Coronavirus cases globally were over 241 million and had led to over 4.9 million deaths. The overall deaths due to coronavirus in Africa surpassed 216,000. Approximately 219 million people recovered from the disease. While the statistics remain favorable towards Africa, particularly regarding deaths, we cannot discount the impact of the pandemic on our continent. We mourn the lost souls, acknowledge the burden and sorrow of families and loved ones left behind. Unfortunately, our mother continent is lagging in terms of vaccinations. This calls for a radical shift in strategy, a concerted effort by governments to secure and vaccinate their populations, while educating them to strictly observe all preventive protocols. The reality, however, is that the pandemic may be with us for a while longer. My brothers and sisters, I spent some time talking about the coronavirus pandemic because the negative impact on the socioeconomic fortunes of our African people has been massive. So insidious has it been that it has literally relegated many of the challenges facing our people. Challenges such as unemployment, bad governance, corruption, inadequate health facilities, poor roads, insecurity, and many others. Furthermore, revenues have been heavily affected as the demand for Africa's commodities such as oil, coffee, cocoa, and tourism has sharply declined. The African Development Bank states that Africa's GDP contracted to 2.1% in 2020, in what has been the worst recession suffered in half a century. The African Development Bank is forecasting a positive outlook, projecting that Africa's real GDP will be around 3.4%. However, this outlook is not set in stone. It is subject to unknown internal and external factors and conditions. The informal sector, which constitutes about 86% of the labor force and lacks social protection against economic shocks, faces devastating consequences. This is especially true for women workers, who make up the majority of this sector. According to Bloomberg, as a result of the pandemic, an estimated 30 million people were pushed into extreme poverty in 2020. The report ominously suggested that in spite of the expected growth, another 39 million people could still be pushed into extreme poverty. Indeed, the world has become more fragile as we all face a common existential risk. Life, as we have known it, has changed in unimaginable ways. Ladies and gentlemen, this suggests radical but practical solutions if we are to overcome these challenges. There is hope. One of Africa's greatest tasks is to build effective partnerships and reinforce leadership to navigate through the pandemic, save lives, and put our economies back on more resilient recovery pathways. The speed and quality of the economic recovery process from the pandemic will depend on our shared sense of collective responsibility. Despite the devastating effects of the pandemic, Africa can accelerate and build back better, as the theme for this program suggests. The development of vaccines by several countries on different continents should inspire Africa to look both outwards and inwards for solutions. Here are a few ways we can do that. First, we must address the big divide in healthcare capacities. According to the Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics and Policy, before the pandemic, Africa had reportedly an average of only 135 beds per 10,000 people and 35 physicians per 10,000 people. More economically developed countries, by contrast, have 10 times that number of physicians and nurses and spend nearly 60 times more per capita on health. Africa can and must rise to this challenge. In addition, Africa must improve affordable access to medical supplies by building quality and cost-effective healthcare infrastructure and manufacturing capacity for pharmaceuticals, medicines, and vaccine production. This is why, as President of Ghana, I developed a program and supported Ghanaian pharmaceutical industries with stimulus packages to improve their efficiencies and enhance their productivity. Second, the digital divide has worsened, and the pandemic laid this fact bare. Countries with poor energy and power access, low electricity coverage, and limited broadband internet access could not stay open to transition some key businesses to the virtual new normal. Building back Africa's economy requires closing this digital divide and expanding access to technology. As economies recover, the world will become more digitalized, and we have to be prepared for this. Businesses, people, financial institutions, and governments have to rapidly adjust to this new normal. A robust digital infrastructure is necessary for a resilient build-back. Digital education of the population is important for the youth especially, including even the older born before computer generation. It will enable them to adapt to the internet age and protect them from internet and mobile money fraudsters. By all legitimate and cost-effective means, let us digitalize. We must also use regulation and government's positive policies and purchasing power to drive progress, deployment, and use of ICTs. We must be thinking ahead. We must be directing technology companies to focus on neglected areas that will impact the life of our people, such as in agribusiness and healthcare. The innovation must not become a bubble that will burst in the future. I like fintech companies, and during my time in office, we laid a strong foundation and promoted their growth. I further think fintechs must show more differentiation and diversify the seeming over-concentration on creating payment platforms that are high-yielding today. I'm excited by the development and growth of telemarketing and online internet shopping. It offers opportunities for young people to use motorbikes, scooters, bicycles, tricycles, and vans to do deliveries to various households and workplaces. By simply accessing an app, one can get anything from consumables to heavy equipment on platforms such as Jumia, Alibaba, Kiku, Bolt, Uber, and the many others that exist. We must also ensure cyber resilience. The third is the divide in the labor market. This has been further heightened by the pandemic. Those with skills are able to keep their jobs, while low-skilled workers, especially those employed in the informal sector, including small and medium enterprises, have lost their jobs. Many of these low-skilled personnel happen to be people who were already low-income earners. Imagine what many have had to endure as they struggle to survive. In my country, Ghana, for instance, I recall proposing that the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, SNIT, agree to an arrangement with such persons, particularly those in the private sector, such that they pay them a small part of their contributions to enable them to survive during such periods of hardship. The COVID-19 lockdown periods demonstrated clearly that the success of a nation depends on businesses in addition to its SMEs, which employ millions and is a key driver of development. The quest for foreign direct investment, FDI, is great, no doubt, but the mantra for development also demands that we improve our own SMEs. SMEs have limited capacity to access funds, so let governments offer SME funds and tax waivers to stimulate them to expand and employ more of our young people and people with disabilities. Governments must also invest strategically in manufacturing to limit the heavy burden of imports on African economies. This will create more jobs. I'm confident that Africa can emerge positively from the challenges arising from this pandemic. As Africa builds back, priority should be placed on the quality of growth, not just the quantum of growth. No growth is worth having if it does not improve or reflect in the livelihoods of our people. Growth must be more equitable and focused on sectors that are better able to create jobs. For me, growth is not inclusive if it is not shared equitably. And this is the reason we need to deepen democracy in Africa and empower citizens and civil society organizations to advocate inclusiveness and shared growth. This is what our national discourse and the intra-African discourse must be about. We also need honesty and transparency from our governments. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, let me emphasize that Africa must build back by focusing on the private sector, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises, who are the lifelines of our economies and the largest employers of labor. This does not and must never mean government has no business in creating jobs. Government also has that responsibility. Africa must build back by focusing sharply on food and nutritional security. We must do all we can to make agriculture and agro-processing attractive to our young people. Africa must build back by ensuring women are firmly seated at the decision-making table. We must not just pay lip service to this. We must ensure that women are strongly supported, as the majority of them have lost incomes due to their greater dependence on informal markets and sectors such as trade and tourism. Africa must build back by paying greater attention to climate change and global warming. Treating the F better for sustainable development will in itself prevent pandemics and improve the supply chain crisis that the world is experiencing now. To quote the Nigerian scholar and poet Osundari, and I quote, "The earth is ours to plow, not to plunder," quotations closed. We owe it a duty to get the buy-in of the communities so that development is based on consensus. In addition to these, we must fully implement the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement to create competitive industrial manufacturing capacities and wider trade and investment opportunities and fast-track Africa's industrialization. This will position our African economies to withstand future global shocks better. We cannot wait until the next pandemic before we act. For the survival of our countries and our dear people, we must ensure that as the time changes, our people are ready to face their unknown. This is a time for the artificial boundaries that separate us to be erased. We cannot allow politics, religion, ethnicity, colonial heritage, language, and culture to continue to separate us. We must hold hands together and rebuild together. I'm confident that we will get through this crisis together. We're only as strong as the partnerships we build together. This moment calls for leadership that can navigate uncertainties and complexities and restore hope and confidence. Selfless, audacious leadership is what we need at this time. COVID-19 can be defeated in Africa, and we can build back safer, better, healthier, and a more resilient continent. And I thank you all very much for your time and attention. And please enjoy the 2021 African Economic